بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم ألهمنا مراشد أمورنا وأعذنا من شرور أنفسنا. The tricks of the devil have never changed. But every era, yes, they do become more stronger, they become more deadly, more terrible, more ugly. They penetrate more into places where we never thought before it would penetrate. First it starts with non-Muslims, but they got some feelings, they got some principles, they got some humanity in them. And then the devil penetrates so much that they become like animals. أُولَٰئِكَ كَالْأَنْعَامِ. Allah Tabarak says, like those animals in the field, they got nothing to live for. One cow runs in one direction, all of them run in that direction. Their life is just to do as everyone is doing, there's no direction. When the devil has penetrated in non-Muslims, then after that his attention turns to the people of Islam. It is very hard to prevent a person from waking up for Salah. Fajr, he might say, I'm very tired. But then Zuhr, he hears the Adhan again, he says, let me go. Asr, he says, I'm busy. But then Maghrib, he says, let me go. As long as the mind is there, as long as the mind is there, the mind itself a time will come where it will tell the person, you're wasting your life. So throughout history, the devil found that two things were most unique in pulling a person in a grip. We have it under the word called addiction. And one would always like intertwine with the other. One was gambling and one was intoxicants. And with gambling and intoxicants there came that filthy life of woman. And then everything else that went with it. Allah Tabarak says, إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ الشَّيْطَانِ. That the next time you're walking in this, to speak about drugs, one is we can give an example, that person was in drugs and what happened to him. And no one's story is clean. It can take a person into the depths of depression. But what is happening on a worldwide basis? We're looking at a small community. When America was kicked out of Afghanistan, and what was known as the Islamic Emirate now started doing work, many of us will know in those prisons where they kept many Muslims for many years, torture chambers. So now those prisons were emptied out because the people who were kept in were not guilty of any crime. The only crime was that they wanted the kalima La ilaha illallah to reign supreme. So America left, like how they're making the story in the news now. We worry so much of the women of Afghanistan. If someone has to ask them, did you worry about the husbands and the fathers and the sons of the women of Afghanistan? Because when they left and the Muslims then started cleaning up the country, what was the most heartbreaking sight? They never cried for martyrs. They never went to the Qabristan and cried, so many of our brothers and fathers died. For them, martyrdom was an honor. What broke the heart was under the bridges, in the dirtiest of places, they would find Muslims. He was a lawyer, he was a professor, he was a teacher, he was an educated man. And now he had become as thin as a stick. His face had gone in. And you're looking at that man like a ghost he looks. And they're taking out his name and they're looking at this man. This is an educated person. There the Western world will never say that what happened to all the people who they did educate. He said, educate the woman. You say, what about the educated men? What did you do with them? They pumped so much of drugs in that country. So much of drugs were pumped in that country. that the prisons which were kept once upon a time for what they call the prisoners, the threat to the peace of Afghanistan, they emptied out those prisons and they had to change it all into drug rehabilitation centers. With love, they had to pull people out of the streets. They said late at night, 1 o'clock in the morning, they're sending the soldiers. Those people said, now when we entered, we were entering with our military uniform, but not to find any American. We were now looking for our Muslim brother who never wanted to come out. They had to go in the dirtiest of places and pull him out. They had to put them like criminals in lines. They had to take them as though you are prisoners, criminals to the drug rehab. Those people never wanted to go. They found men, they found children, they found women, they found girls. That nation that said we worried about liberation of women, we want freedom for them all. They pumped so much of drugs in these people that if ever we have to leave Afghanistan, there will be no one left in Afghanistan. Just give drugs, just give drugs. When that number becomes huge, and you have to look at a nation that he was the breadwinner for the family, he was the father figure for the family, he was the brother of the family, and now each one of them is like a ghost. His body has given up. But at that time, a nation who said we never gave up, when the whole world thought America will never be kicked out of this land, that nation who never gave up at that time, if you looked at the scene, that you had thousands and thousands of the Afghanis who were now deep in drugs, that nation again said we will not give up on our brothers and sisters. Somehow or the other, to run a drug rehab, only those people who are there will know what it is. You're sitting with your 5, your 10, your 15. You got a hips class, the boy is naughty, give him one smack. Your father says, you can't hit my son, you listen to his sabak, you tell him, you don't want to learn, why don't you change madrasa? But his mind is there still. You come into a drug rehab, the mind is not there. You want to win him over, he wants to run away. You want to save him, he wants to kill you. But they never lost hope. That Allah who destroyed the devil in the country and kicked the devil out, they said that Allah will one day save this entire nation. And they went for it. He created the centers. They said we will save our brothers, we will do for our brothers. So the first point I want to mention is that a very big effort is being made. It is not my child and your child, Allah saved all our children. That what did you do? How could you do this? That you will shout a person when evil was far and he went looking for evil. He found it in a very far place. But that individual who has been made a target, when a child is kidnapped, the father can't shout him after and he said, I wasted 2 million on you. The son said, Daddy, I was out. And when the enemy's eye fell on me, then I was kidnapped. When the children of today and the adults of today are falling in drugs, it is not because that child is going looking for evil. It's because evil has started looking for our children. They have become the targets of an orchestrated kidnapping. And how a father and a mother cries if a child is kidnapped. And they go out of their way to save their child. If a child has to fall in this sin, in this filth, in this evil of the devil, it is not those professors and those doctors and those lawyers of Afghanistan who are intelligent people. All of them never make the mistake. They were pulled into drugs like how a person is pulled into a car. So when you see that individual, instead of showing a rude attitude, show a face of sympathy. That you have been kidnapped. And if I can somehow pull you out of the hand of those robbers, Can a person ever come out of an addiction? Islam started when the Arabs were addicted. Quran was revealed to a nation that as Quran was being read to them, they were still finding it hard to leave their liquor. The word for liquor in Arabic is al-khamru. Khamr from the word khimar. Khimar means a woman wears a orni, a burqa, a staff. She covers her head. Khamr was anything that is taken, delicious at the beginning, intoxicating in the ending. It came to a nation who was so attached to the alcohol that in the beginning period of Islam, the law immediately did not come, leave it. For Almighty Allah made the world understand it is not easy to just leave an addiction. Had the law come, this was a jamaat of Sahaba. When the suhbah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, miracles were happening. Yesterday they killed their daughters. Allah's Nabi said no, and it stopped immediately. Yesterday they did not like a daughter in their family. Allah's Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Mubarak to the woman whose first child is a girl. They became happy. One sentence would change them. Such a nation, however, when it came to addiction, Almighty Allah also revealed ayat slowly. The revealing slowly of ayat, one verse would come that they ask you regarding liquor, intoxication, addiction. Say to them that you might see a lot of benefit in it, but there's a lot of harm in it. وَإِثْمُهُمَا أَكْبَرُ مِنْ نَفْعِهِمَا. Can you not understand that the harm is much more than the benefit? Who speaks like this? Normally if your son is taking something wrong, you don't speak in a manner that let's talk about it. It is one smack, you say you dare take that thing again. The creator of mankind spoke to the drunkards of the world, to the addicts of the world, to the people taking this addiction and they losing their mind. That قُلْ فِيهِمَا إِثْمٌ كَبِيرٌ وَمَنَافِعُ لِلنَّاسِ. That say to them that you know the sin is huge. And yes, there is some benefit, no doubt. Which king will ever speak this? But it was not a king. Almighty Allah spoke to the one in the addiction, because he was the one being spoken to. يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْخَمْرِ. The addict was spoken to and love. The addict was spoken to and love from Almighty Allah. So much of love that to say benefit, yes, there is benefits. We're not denying the benefits. But you know the harm. وَإِثْمُهُمَا أَكْبَرُ مِنْ نَفْعِهِمَا. He started pulling back. But that ayat remained in Quran. The law was going to come later on that now you cannot drink anymore. But the ayat was going to remain in Quran. One benefit was, it was going to teach the world that understand to leave an addiction is not easy. For which reason Almighty Allah spoke with sympathy to the addict. He was not shouted. He was not told, are you mad? He was not told, just leave it. The addiction was understood, this is serious, you need help. You need someone to be able to speak to you and to say, when you are sober, let's look at both sides. Umar radiallahu anh finds in his gathering, someone who used to visit is not there. He says, what happened to him? He said, the old habits. They used to drink in the past and sometimes old habits come back. He said, the old habit caught him. He went back to the bottle. Now he's not going to ever come. He's gone drunk like anything. Umar radiallahu anh keeps quiet. Then he calls for a paper. He writes a letter. In the name of Allah, after praising Almighty Allah, he says, oh my beloved brother, remember Allah is most merciful. And remember the punishment of Allah is most terrible. Then he gives it to someone who knows this addict. And he says, I want you to deliver it to him when he's sober. Wait for the time when he's sober and say, your brother Umar has said this. If Umar wanted to, he could have said, bring him here and he could have lashed him. We will teach him a lesson he'll never forget. But now the addict needed love. As he puts the hand into the friend, he says to the Jamaat around, every one of you I want to engage in dua for your brother. Everyone need dua. And then the letter goes. We want change to come in people who have been caught by the devil. We will have to ask Almighty Allah to pull that person out. Shouting, becoming angry, looking down at the person. The letter reaches him when he is sober. The name that Umar sent this letter to you already breaks his heart. That he's worried about me. And then when he looks at that letter, the beginning of the letter is such a small letter. The first part is don't ever lose hope. And the second part is don't ever forget the coming punishment. He himself notes that is what an advice he gave me. What an advice. There and there he sends a message back that say to him, I have left this now, inshallah, forever. Umar radiallahu anh is so excited, he turns to the people around. He says, if ever it happens with your brother what has happened here, do the same. One is you yourself send a message to him where you show there is always hope, and at the same time you warn him of the punishment of him. He said, number two, everyone make dua for him. He said, number three, do not ever make him despondent in the mercy of Allah. So you do this. Addicts, Islam made, where the world normally will say an addiction you can't leave. Had it been like that, addiction is in liquor. If you had visited Turkey a few years ago, you would have seen in front of the masjid was the biggest liquor store. Salat and no one was in the masjid, they were drinking alcohol. I visited Turkey before the coup. The person who's inviting me to his shop, he says, kul halal, meaning everything halal. And in his hand he got his bottle of liquor. In his hand. I needed some boxes, I entered a shop. I said to the person, I need this box. He said, hold on, I'll go get it for you. He went for 10 minutes, he left me standing in the shop. 10 minutes later he came back, he got the box. I told him, this was South Africa, you'll come back, no shop. He said, where you will steal, are you not a Muslim? He said, where will you steal, are you not a Muslim? What a bayan he gave me. Behind him the whole line is full with liquor. His whole line behind him, he's selling the best of liquor behind or the worst of liquor. But that sentence of his, Muslim you are, will you steal? I couldn't even tell him you are Muslim, you drink. Because they were so grounded in the alcohol that you would say this nation will never change. The coup happened, and the failed coup, the government became stronger. Law was passed, initial law, that around the masjid if you got a shop you can't sell liquor. In the love of the masjid, the man whose sustenance was selling liquor. In the love of the masjid, visit Turkey now, you will not find around the masjid anything to do with liquor. Do you think it was easy for the man who grew up with the love of it, whose basic sustenance was the whole line full of liquor? And now someone says to him, the masjid is here, you selling liquor? He said, I can't do that. He said, this is Allah's masjid. And the next day the man says to his wife, we are no longer going to sell. How do you think they cleared the entire area? Now you visit in Turkey, there are cities which is say alcohol-free cities. How can you create an alcohol-free city? There is one thing that breaks addiction, and it is called Iman. This is that one thing which the devil never found it in the Christians and in the Jews and in atheists and in Satanists. As soon as he brought them in the addiction, they would die in their addiction. But Imam Usman radiallahu anhu's narration is in Nasai. He says there was a man in the past. A woman was in love with him. He was a man of piety. She could not control herself anymore, so she says to her slave that you go and call him and say that there is something to be discussed. We need this estate to be wound up. We need some help in the masala. The man comes. The slave girl already knows what's going to happen, so she locks the door. And this man now finds himself in a house of the woman. The woman says to him that I haven't called you for any big issue. There's no longer I can stay without you. She says, I give you, you're not leaving this house. Meaning she told him that if you have to go out like that, I'm going to tell the world about what you did. No one's going to believe you, your name is going to be spoiled. So she says, either you sleep with me, or you kill this boy that is next to me, a young child. She says, or the last is you drink from this glass. Looking at the tree, the man felt that it is only one drink. Only one drink. But an intoxicant will finish everything. So he takes the drink and he says, do you have more? And he takes a second drink and a third drink. And he goes in such a state that he sleeps with the woman and he kills the child. Usman radiallahu anhu, like he weeps when he speaks about it. He said, a man in the past. And Usman radiallahu anhu said, oh believing men and women, remember an intoxicant and iman can never go hand in hand. He said one is definitely going to push the other one out. Allah says, He says sometimes it might happen that the intoxicant will push out iman. He says another time it will be the iman will push out the intoxicant. Iman pushing out the intoxicant is what we all want. And it's happening in a big scale. Addicts are coming out of their addiction. And they becoming unique helpers of humanity. They are the one giving the lecture to others that I was an addict, I came out, you can come out. And the opposite is also happening. Where addiction is pushing out iman. And when the individual writes that I no longer want to try giving this thing up. And since the only thing that's stopping me is my religion, rather just leave the religion. Okay. But iman pushes it out. And if iman pushes it out, the world has seen in the Muslim world, miraculous. There was the muhaddis of the era, whose life changed by Imam Shu'bah. Abdullah bin Maslama al-Qa'nabi. Because of his friendship with addicts of the liquor, of the bottle, he would sit and they would drink, sit and drink. This man later on becomes the ustad of Imam Bukhari, Imam Muslim, Imam Nasai. Who becomes the ustad? A man who's an addict to liquor. If the world says you're in an addiction, you can't come out, then this man would never be the ustad of Imam al-Bukhari. Islam has changed many addicts. So the story that we're losing the battle, we don't lose the battle in this. But we have to be ready to fight this battle. As in Afghanistan, they said we will go for it. Forget the disgrace. Forget the issue. We got so many thousands. Will we ever save them? They said there's no covering the eye and say I can't fight this battle. If the devil wants to fight it, then our Nabi said we will go front. We got Quran, we got Surah Kahf, we got du'as, and we got something called I will continue giving you hope in the mercy of Allah until the day comes when you grab onto that rope. But if we pull back and we say it's gone out of way, the fire is too big, and you say let the whole thing burn, a believer never ever talks that. The believer says I will go working to put out the fire. Either the fire will go or my life will go in it. We are fighting a battle in this. It is not the boy and the girl out of naughtiness they got caught in the drug. They have been kidnapped and they need someone to pull them out. Abdullah bin Maslama is a drunkard. Life is in drinking. The Imam of Hadith of the era, Imam of Iraq, Imam Shu'bah passes. There are students behind. Students recognize the Ustad of Hadith. A drunkard will never recognize. And when you drunk, You do funny things. So he notices Imam Shu'bah, so he asks someone, who's this big man and who he thinks he is? He says, do you not know this is the Imam of Iraq? He says, what is the Imam? He says, he is the leader of the Muhaddiseen. Hundreds gather around him to listen to the ahadith. He says, what's this hadith story? So they say, the word of Allah's Nabi. He said, I'll also go listen. He's drunk. So he walks up, Imam Shu'bah is on his animal. He comes up to Imam Shu'bah. People, like when a student sees a drunkard coming, you say you're in the wrong line, like what you doing here? He's dressed the way he's dressed. He says, you Shu'bah. So Imam Shu'bah just keeps quiet and says, do you want something? He says, teach me hadith. That's how a drunkard talks. That's how an addict talks. He's not going to say, Hazrat, Assalamu alaikum, can I? Say, teach me a hadith. Imam Shu'bah looks at him and says, that you are not fit at the moment for me to narrate a hadith to you. Look at your condition. He pulls out a knife. And he comes forward and he says, narrate to me a hadith or I will kill you. Imam Shu'bah, what light used to come from these people? What light used to come? One dua in the miracle of Islam. He says, An Mansur, I narrate from Mansur. An Ribi'i, I narrate from Ribi'i. An Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, I narrate from Abdullah bin Mas'ud. An Mansur, An Ribi'i, An ibn Mas'ud, An Rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. إذا فاتك الحياة, that my Nabi said, if you lose what is known as modesty, فَاصْنَعْ مَا شِئْتَ, then do what you want. You want to kill me, kill me. Meaning this addiction has taken away your humanity. When you have become an animal, now do what you want. إِذَا فَاتَكَ الْحَيَاء, this is what the drug has done. It has taken the girl's haya away. It has taken the boy's haya. She can be an apa with burqa, but if the drug has come into her system, she can be teaching in the class during the day. She is selling herself and her daughters at night. You will say, what are you doing? You will say, my Nabi mentioned, إِذَا فَاتَكَ الْحَيَاء, the day the devil takes away this haya of yours. There's no barriers now. Do what you want. You want to kill the muhaddis of the era, you want to kill your mother, kill your mother. He hears this, in that state of his, he just drops. And as he walks back home, one word playing. This is the strength of the word of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So much of nur. This is Iman and Islam. You don't know which word is going to change the man. But when we're fighting this battle, we only have to put that word in front of him. You don't have to be Imam Shu'bah because it's still the word of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You don't have to be the Imam of the era, it is just an ayat of Quran. To be able to write the translation of one verse and say, oh my brother, when you become sober, I want you to read this verse. إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ الشَّيْطَانِ, that understand the one behind your addiction is the devil. إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ الشَّيْطَانِ, the devil desires أَن يُوقِعَ بَيْنَكُمُ الْعَدَاوَةَ وَالْبَغْضَاءَ, to create between you and the people who love you. Meaning now when you're in your addiction, you love those friends selling you drugs, and you hate your own mother and father. You love the person who's squeezing your blood out, and you hate the one who's making dua for you. Say, who's behind this? He said, it is the devil. إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ الشَّيْطَانِ, it is the devil desiring to create enmity and hatred fil khamri wal maisir, through your addiction to gambling and your addiction to the bottle. When I started, I mentioned it's not only the scourge of drugs that the Muslims are facing in this country. Gambling has become, sometimes you might say, even a worse addiction. Gambling has finished families. The wife knows that her husband is always in his mood. He has entered that mood because he's lost yesterday so much. He's waiting for the next play so I can win back what I lost. But you don't win in this game. Every time he takes another loss, he hates her even more. She's doing nothing wrong in the house. But when he comes, he regards her as the biggest calamity. What amount of friction is created? Who's behind it? Allah Ta'ala says, understand. Innama yuridu shaitan. Write it to the addict. Addicted to gambling, addicted to the bottle. But there are times when we become sober. At that time, have this ayat. If our friend is not going to write it for us, and we are addicted to gambling, write it ourselves. Put it on our phone. And sometimes when we're on the way to that gambling den, then just look at that message. From the Creator of the heavens and the earth, He sent a message to me. This is not Umar sending a message to a man, this is Allah sending a message to me. That you know what, the devil wants you to hate your family. وَيَصُدَّكُمْ عَنْ ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. With this alcohol and this gambling, and now alcohol means anything that covers the mind. With this drug and this gambling, he wants to turn you away from thinking of me. وَعَنِ الصَّلَاةِ. And he wants to turn you away from the masjid. And this last verse, the taste of the Arabic language has to be there. فَهَلْ أَنْتُمْ مُنْتَهُونَ. فَهَلْ أَنْتُمْ مُنْتَهُونَ means, oh, this is a word of love. Like. One is you say, I'll punish you if you do it. Say, هَلْ أَنْتُمْ مُنْتَهُونَ. That will you not stop? Will you not stop? فَهَلْ أَنْتُمْ مُنْتَهُونَ. If an addict will read this verse, the time will come when his inside will respond and say, Allah, I stopped. فَهَلْ أَنْتُمْ مُنْتَهُونَ. But he needs this. He needs it with a nice voice behind it. Someone reading that ayat, beautiful Quran, and a nice translation under it. That my Allah is saying, is it not time still? فَهَلْ أَنْتُمْ مُنْتَهُونَ. Will you not stop? Will you not stop? Shu'bah hears one narration, إِذَا فَاتَكَ الْحَيَاءِ, and he stops. When haya will leave you, do what you want. He goes to his mother. He says, tonight my friends are going to be coming like every night. And they will be expecting a party like every night. So, oh my mother, I'm going. She said, where are you going? He said, I'm going to Medina. But since my friends will come tonight, I want you to feed them all. Feed them all and say to them that my son is now gone, you will not find him here again. When the addict walks from Iraq and he goes to Medina, he finds Imam Malik rahimahullah and he sits with him. And he will stay in the company of Imam Malik rahimahullah until he becomes one of the leading muhaddiseen that the world saw. For an addict to become the teacher of Imam Bukhari rahimahullah, it was to give a message to the addicts of the world and the parents and the families of that addict. That don't ever look down on that one who's been caught by the devil. Because if you can pull him out, he might one day bring honor to the entire family. Don't ever look down. As for the one who's caught in this addiction, how do you come out? One is continuous reciting of Quran. فَهَلْ أَنْتُمْ مُنْتَهُونَ. Second is, family and friends will always make dua. May Allah make this message go to the addict. Sympathy is to every addict. Sympathy. Because he's kidnapped. But the addict has to know that he has to beg Allah. And sometimes those that are begging Allah, they say, how long? How long must I beg? So number one, how to beg, and number two, how long to beg. How to beg. There's an incident that's mentioned. It got nothing really to do with the topic of drugs. But it ended up in a very unique. So to understand that final message, we need the incident. In Multan, there was a famous friend of Almighty Allah by the name of Shah Ruknuddin. So even the king of the era was amazed at his piety and people going around him. So he mentions to his advisor one day, who's an alim, Moulana Zahiruddin, that if you see Shah Ruknuddin, like how the people love him. So Moulana Zahiruddin wasn't too impressed, and he said, you can always have people around you, but knowledge, I don't think he got knowledge. And then to prove his point to the king, he said, tomorrow I'll go and visit him. And when I sat by him in front of all his students, I'm going to ask him 3 questions. And ignorance is a disgrace. When he say, I don't know, then you say, what's all this? Like people running behind you. He said, I will ask him that why is it that when we have to make wudu, then the face is the main thing to wash. But why is it that first we wash the hands? Because the hands comes afterwards. So it's the face, the hands, the masa and the feet. But before going to the face, I first wash my hand to the rest. And then I put water in my mouth, and then I put water in the nose. What that got to do? Couldn't I just start with the face? So he thinks of this, and that night he has a dream. In the dream he sees it in front of the sheikh, and before he can complain, the sheikh takes out some sweetmeats and says, welcome, welcome, why don't you eat something from me? So it's a good dream, like the man is giving you something sweet. And when he wakes up in the morning, he got the taste of the sweet. So that taste now starts making him like confused, like that. What a dream that was. But still, because he's adamant, so he forgets the taste and he says, I'm going to ask this man. So when he comes there to the gathering, Shah Ruknuddin is so happy, he says, I wait for ulama to come. All these other people come, I can't engage with them. I wait for people like you. He says, you know, when I find an opportunity, I just like to speak about Islam. He said, let's speak about Islam. The Shaykh then says, you know, last night I was thinking about this. That so beautiful Islam is. Everything got wisdom, everything. He said, I just sat and I thought that how is it that Allah, He wanted us when we make wuzu, first we must wash our hands like this. Like there must be some wisdom in this. He said, I thought, and what came to me is that wudu needs pure water. And pure water got to do that it is watery, and it has no terrible taste, and it got no terrible smell. So Allah made it conditional that the man before making wuzu, washing the face, must first feel the water. So in feeling the water, he washes his hands. Then he must taste the water to see it tastes right. It's amazing, isn't it? But for this Moulana, it's more amazing. Like, what a thing you telling me. Amazing, and then he will smell it. He said, now comes the time. So Moulana Zahiruddin is like shocked, like just looking at him. Then he says, then amazing, like when a man has relations with his wife, now the relationship and the dirt that came out from the body is restricted to one place. But suddenly the command came that the whole body needs ghusl. He says, Moulana, isn't it like that? Did you ever think about this? That what relationship the whole body got to do with like one intimate relationship with a woman who's halal for him. But he has to wash the whole body. So Zahiruddin is just looking. He says, on that Moulana I was thinking that if ghusl is farz for a man who spends very close time with someone who's halal for him, then what is the condition of the man who spends very close time with someone who's haram for him? When this man's entire body becomes haram, dirty and filthy, he says that man's entire heart becomes filthy. He says when he has taken the company of druggies, that time it wasn't druggies, alcoholics, and evil people and dirty people, and he links up with them so much. When this man knows I have to take ghusl because my whole body is dirty, he says, Moulana, I want to know from you, what must that man do now? He's taking ghusl because he got too close to halal. He says, what must that man do? I will add on that there, when the drug is taken, it is a feeling that attacks the entire body. There how ghusl becomes wajib, this whole body becomes dirty. But more than the body, this heart becomes dirty. How that liquor makes you filthy in and out. This drug makes you filthy in and out. The mind was spoiled, the heart is spoiled. So he says, Moulana, what must he do? Can I tell him to take ghusl? The ghusl will make the body clean, but what about the heart? And Zahiruddin is like stunned now. He came with his one question, he got that answer, now he got a question. That is there ghusl for this man. Then Shah Ruknuddin said, for him there's ghusl, Moulana. Now this masala, Moulana is thinking, I never heard that. That when a man takes a drug, you tell him, go take ghusl. Work is. He says, for him there's ghusl. He's looking at what ghusl? He says, the only thing is that man needs the water of the dams. And he has to put it over his body. And he becomes clean to go out in the world. He says, this man needs the water of the eye. This man, to purify his heart, has to cry. He says, he needs the water of the eye. And he needs so much water like how that man needs water to be ghusl. He will have to cry to Allah. And with that tear, it comes in a narration, that tear that comes in the fear of Allah, it has been made haram on the fire of Jannah. Ulama advised, if ever a tear comes from your eye, then they sometimes would grab that tear. Then they would rub it on their own face. They would say, I need a little bit more, grab another tear, rub it on their body. Because that tear, when the fire of Jahannam is haram, now this body has become haram. He said he needs that tear to clean his entire heart. If we are in an addiction, we have to cry. We have to cry so much that we get so much of water that can purify our body in and out. 1, 2 tears might not do the job, but carry on giving tears. Cry and cry and cry. Because Almighty Allah, when He starts gathering those tears, He has His container. And when those tears reach a certain number, there is a kitab that has been published by Talimuddin Bispingo. The name is Orchards of Love. It's a very nice kitab to read. Many articles from their website now, they have just taken it. So today I was reading, a few days ago it came to me, I read. So this incident of Shah Ruknuddin is mentioned in that. And this other incident is also mentioned. That the one I mentioned, the first about Abdullah bin Maslama, and very other nice incidents, and something to read. But yesterday when I was coming, I was going to Binoni, I phoned my brother-in-law Imran, I told him I got a program on drugs. So if you saw any amazing narration in the recent time which I haven't yet read, then why don't you just send it to me? So last night when I put on my computer, I saw an email there. So today, just before the program, I had the chance to read that email. So because it was the last thing I read, now it will be the last thing on which we will end this program. It ends the question of how much tears do I need now to pull me out of my addiction? How much tears? So he says, Malik ibn Dinar rahimullah, while making tawaf of the Baytullah, he began looking at the amount of people coming for the Hajj. And it's amazing always, just getting jamaats after jamaats. So while making tawaf, he says, Allah, amazing this. How wonderful it will be if I'm able to know now that in this entire jamaat, that whose Hajj has been accepted. And I will go and congratulate hand by hand to the person there. And he said, and I don't think there can be someone whose Hajj can't be accepted. But if there is one such person, then Allah, if you could tell me so I could go and sympathize with them. Even here you are very forgiven. I really feel you sorry, my friend. He sees a dream at night, then one man's Hajj. So Allah is happy with everyone except one. Morning is gripped with fear, then what if I'm that one? Look at that. What if I'm that one? Whole day is worried. A night he sees another dream that no, it's not you. This is a man from Balkh, Khurasan, Afghanistan area, and going into Iran. His name is even mentioned in the dream, Muhammad bin Harun. Even the name is mentioned. So the next day he sets out to the camps to find where do the people from Khurasan, where they stay. Now he finds those camps and they're moving in, then he comes and he asks Balkh. See the people of Balkh, he goes there, he says, Muhammad bin Harun. They're happy, like you said, you're asking about our man. He said, what do you mean your man? He said, there is no man who's a better zahid, like he left the world. And the amount of ibadah, he's always fasting. And he's wondering, I got the wrong man. But the name is the same name, Balkh is the same Balkh. He says, where he stays, he says, you must see the place, even in land, our land, he always looks for land. Very run-down places, you'll find him. He comes there and he finds a man whose hand is cut, amputated. And he has like chained himself up practically, that because the chain is holding him, he's not going to go anywhere, he's just there. And he's just performing his salah. He hears someone moving in the tent, so he shortens his salah, he turns. He says, who are you? He says, I am Malik bin Dinar. He says, the man who everyone speaks of his knowledge and his zuhad, abstinence. So Malik bin Dinar says, if you speak about knowledge, then Allah is the one of knowledge. Ours is nothing. And if you're really speaking of zuhad, abstinence, then speak of Umar bin Abdul Aziz. He was a man who was a prince and he left the world. He said, me, I never leave the world, I never had the world. So don't call me a zahid. He was. This was Malik bin Dinar. So then he looks at Malik bin Dinar and immediately he starts crying. And he says, don't tell me you had a dream about me. So Malik bin Dinar says, that's how you know. He said, I've been making a hajj for the last 40 years. And every year someone of the pious has a dream about me. And every year someone comes to say to me, Allah is still not happy with you. He says, so when I saw you, another year. So Malik bin Dinar says, amazing, 40 years Hajj. Why will Allah not be happy with you? Look at your condition. He says, I committed a crime that I think that it could be sufficient for the punishment of the world. What was it? Intoxication. He said, I drank until one day when I come home, I'm in such a state. I walk past my wife and I find my mother, she's getting the fire ready. She's stoking the fire. And my mother then looks at me and says, you rubbish. Tomorrow is the 1st of Ramadan. People are getting ready to fast and you're going to sleep in this condition. She said, don't you fear this fire? She says, I walk up to my mother and I said, how dare you speak to me like that? And I slap her in the face. My mother then screams in anger and says, may Allah destroy you. I become angry with her, I grab my mother and I push her into that fire. My wife is sleeping behind and I'm holding her and she burns. And then my wife pulls me away. And everyone, like so much screaming, my wife pushes me into one room and she locks the room. I'm banging on the door and she went maybe, but my mother was already burnt. And the wife most likely sits whole night now not knowing, do I go out and call for help? They'll kill my husband. And then later on, after so many hours, he becomes sober. And he's saying, open up. And the wife is saying, how can I open? Finally, when she opens, I say, what do you did to me? She says, you killed your mother. And I go to that fire and I see her burnt. This is addiction. Burnt. Addicts have killed their families because of it. But how much you have to cry? You have to cry so much. You have to cry so much. 40 years he cried. He says, I grabbed an axe which was nearby and I hit on my hand. The hand that pushed my mother in the fire is not fit to be my hand. I cut it. He said, then I gave away my properties. I left my wife. And every year I come for Hajj, that maybe this year my Allah will say, right, I accept. So much of tears, isn't it? Malik bin Dinar says, with such a son, I don't think you should even be coming here for this Hajj. He said, you have spoiled the lands, what you did, kill your mother. On the tongue of the pious is being said, I am still angry with you, 40 years. So Malik bin Dinar said that night Malik bin Dinar has a dream. You cry so much that you can fulfill that container. Your tawbah will be announced, the acceptance on the tongue of Rasulullah. He has a dream where Allah's Nabi says to him, "Oh Malik, that no one said to you, you must go take people away from Allah. You are a messenger. Who asked you to go take someone away from the hope of Allah?" He said, you rather give him hope in Allah. So now go back to him and tell him that your Allah has forgiven it all. And Allah has promised that on the day of Qiyamah, He will inspire your mother to forgive you. But 40 years of tears that to be gathered to get your tawbah's acceptance on the tongue of Rasulullah. When the addict asks, how long must I cry to come out of the addiction? We will say, carry on crying and carry on trying. Carry on crying and carry on trying. Malik bin Dinar says that to him. This individual looks and smiles. In front of Malik bin Dinar, he lies down. He says, I waited 40 years for this announcement. And then he reads his kalima and he passes away. When Allah wants to accept, it's the tear that made sure death would not come. Until Tawbah came from the heavens to say, are you ready to die? Come. The addict has to cry and the addict has to try. The father and the mother has to cry and the community has to cry. And everyone has to carry on trying. And as for this, it's gone out of control for the people of Iman and Islam. Nothing is ever out of control. We will fight the devil, we will fight Shaitan until he'll become as small as a fly. Nations have been defeated with Islam. The devil has been sent running from pillar to post. Islam will always come high, nothing defeats it. The people of Islam will always be high. But we have to be ready to walk into this. No running away from it. People have to sit. People have to discuss. People have to say, we got the problem. There's no running away. We're not deserting them. They are our children kidnapped. We will find them and bring them back. The kidnapper, Allah save all our children. If he kidnaps, Allah save all. But if he kidnaps, maximum that will happen is he'll kill that child and the child will go straight into paradise. In this drug, if the devil has kidnapped our families, it could happen that the devil will take away that iman from him and he'll burn forever in the fire. May Allah make every one of us instrumental in the guidance of humanity, to think about how to do it, to work towards it, to continue making dua and giving hope to those that have been caught in the trap. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.